My name is Chris, and I'm the Director of Web and Digital Marketing here at Messiah College. I'm very fortunate to work with some really talented people. As Suraj was mentioning earlier, Ramona, who is the Web Services Manager, and John Wheat, who is the Senior Analyst here who does a lot of the back-end stuff with Jadu. I probably look at Jadu a lot differently than a lot of the people on the call today. I'm not actually a developer or an engineer. I really focus on making our website the best and most effective recruitment tool as possible. So I really try to look at our website through the eyes of a prospective student. Maybe that's a graduate student or a high school student who's looking for a college for the first time. So we do a lot of custom content where we're creating landing page experiences or very highly designed and immersive pages that kind of unpack the Messiah College story. And that's really what I want to talk to everyone about today is some of the different types of pages we're creating and how we've kind of created a workflow around creating those different sites and pages. So first, I just want to kind of overview some of our standard widget pages. And these are the pages that pretty much make up 98% of messiah.edu. So you can see here on our web services page, we have around 30 widgets and supplements that we use on home pages and doc pages. And I'll give you a few examples here. These are just pages with different widgets. You can see here we have a featured event widget that pulls in events from our event module. We also have some visit options there on the bottom of the screen. So you can see we have we call it the image hover widget, so that the user can hover over one of those images for those different visit types and find out more information there. We also have here, you can see some accordions and some image links. So we have a lot of these standardized widgets that we allow users, just your typical Jadu editor. We have, I think, around 150 different content editors, employees or work studies here at the college that are creating these pages and using these custom widgets. But what I really want to talk to you today is more about the custom pages that we're building and creating, more the marketing office, that are highly designed. They're custom built, custom coded, just for that specific page. So these are all very unique pages, unique elements. And I kind of wanted to walk through our design process for that. But first, let me give you a couple examples of these pages. So this is the About Messiah page that we just rolled out here really just a couple months ago. So you can see there's video content, there's infographics, there's full bleed carousel with images from our campus. Get to know the area here. You can see all the different things in our area. The user can scroll around, the different portions of this page. So this is obviously not a standard page. It's not something that we could build with just, the standard widgets that we use to kind of create Messiah.edu. Here's another example of this type of page. This is our student life page. As you can see, it's very immersive. There's a lot of content on here. And these are the pages that I guess I'm talking about when I say very customized pages that really require us to start very early on in the design process with wireframing and all that good stuff. So this is our web design workflow. So when we're creating these custom dev pages, we really start right from the get-go with the wireframes. So this is kind of how our web design workflow worked maybe a year or two ago, before we've kind of integrated some new workflows to make this more efficient. So we were wireframing the site in Balsamiq. We were designing it in Photoshop. We were doing just custom HTML prototypes. So we would just take screenshots of the page and then kind of splice them together with HTML. We would do our HTML mockups, which would require a lot of back and forth between the developer and the designer, importing assets and fonts and all that good stuff. And then we would finally get to our CMS implementation, where we would kind of build everything out in Jadu. What we found was this was a very fractured process, and it ended up just taking a lot longer to kind of get to where we needed to be with these pages. So one of the tools we've started to use is Sketch, which is an open source wireframe and design tool that has a lot of cool plugins like Envision. and Avocode. So you can see our web design workflow now has been pretty it's much more efficient just because we are just using Sketch. So we're able to use Sketch from wireframe, design, prototype, and then our HTML mockup with the use of Sketch plugins like InVision and Avocode. So I know that was probably really high level, really quick. This was actually a presentation I did a few months ago. It was a 45-minute presentation, so I'm trying to kind of move through it pretty quickly. And I want to make sure I'm not losing everyone. So I want to kind of walk you through a recent project we did and walk through that design workflow I just shared on the screen. So this was our athletic page. So we had our main athletic link in the global navigation of our website, and it just linked to our athletic site, which was a sidearm site. And they basically just managed all the athletic news for the different sports teams. It had the schedules, it had, the athletes and the coaches, the rosters, all that. But what we found was prospective students really just more or less wanted to see, what life was like for the typical student as far as like game day experience and maybe physical fitness, what were our facilities on campus. So we decided that we needed a new page to kind of help unpack this, and we wanted to build it out in Jadu as well, so it was easy to edit and manage. So here's kind of the workflow that we went through. We started with the wireframe. And one of the things that we've always struggled with at Messiah is just how to balance content and design in the early stages of our design process. So do we start with the content team writing a bunch of copy for a page, and then we kind of figure out how to make that into a website or a web page, or do we design it first, kind of figure out the UX or the different elements on the page, and then ask the content team to come back in and write to those different spaces? And what we found was using Sketch to actually kind of create some of these standardized elements. We call them starting points, so they're not really templated elements because we think that's we just want to make this more of a starting point, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So we use these starting point elements within Sketch, and this is kind of what it looks like when we're doing this. So when we would do this actual process, this wireframe process, we would have the designer in the room, we would have myself, and all the content writers. Typically there's two of them on these projects, and we would start with just an artboard in Sketch. And then we would go to those standardized elements, which are called symbols in Sketch, and kind of drag them onto the page based on what the content team was kind of seeing. So we would kind of be talking through, hey, we need an overview paragraph and a heading. Maybe we want to get into some infographics here on the page. And this allowed us to really just on the fly kind of design the outline of a page and modify it based on what the content team was seeing or thinking. But at the same time, we're still kind of living within the realm of what we've done before using these templated symbols within Sketch. So you can see there just in a few seconds, I was able to kind of wireframe a page within Sketch to kind of give everybody in the room a feel for how the page would be laid out, how much content we would need for the overview paragraph, or how many infographics we would need, stuff like that. So you can see here, this is where that page would have ended up during that process. And then the next thing we would do would be the content team would actually write the copy for those different pages. So you can see now we have the hero copy, we have the overview copy, all of the infographics down there under athletic recognitions. We can now see that they're in. And here we even decided that we wanted an overlay of our Falcon, which is our mascot here at Messiah, to remove two of the infographics and have the Falcon in there as well. So this is really kind of where the wireframe stage would end during this process, and we would hand this off to the designer. Now, one of the cool things about Sketch is that when we hand this off to the designer, we're actually handing it off in a way that's really easy for them to design within Sketch. So they're not having to go to InDesign or Photoshop. The Sketch wireframe is already built on our grid system for Messiah.edu. So those same container widths and gutters and columns that are specified in the CSS files of Messiah.edu are also set up within Sketch. So you can see the width of the total kind of the parent container there is 1160, and that's exactly what it is on Messiah.edu. So as we've wireframed this page, we actually already have it set up in a way that works really well for the design team, so that they're not designing something from scratch in Photoshop or InDesign and sending it back to us with the wrong widths and heights and all that stuff. So this was really, really helpful. And this is kind of where that page ended. So the designer built right on top of our wireframe, this beautifully designed page. You can probably see a lot of the similarities with the overview paragraph and the buttons and the infographic, and there's the falcon. So that's kind of where the design phase would end. However, in a lot of these pages, we would want to kind of look at some of these elements. We weren't sure if they would really work for the end user, if they made sense. So we actually use a plugin called Envision within Sketch to do a lot of the wireframing. So this is an element that we really weren't sure about. We thought it was unique and looked cool, but we really weren't sure if it would be confusing for the end user. So we wanted to actually prototype this page. And again, we used a Sketch plugin called Envision to do that. So here's how that looks. Within Sketch, you have the artboard on the far left, that full page with all the different elements on it. And then we have all these different artboards for, if we're looking at that, what's there to do portion of this page, we have an artboard for each of those elements, those 6 elements that are listed there. So what we can do within Sketch is actually create the prototype. So I'm going to click on that off-campus activities element within the original design, and I'm going to link it to another artboard. So the Envision will actually create a prototype based on this. So now I'm clicking on one of the accordions, the Get Active accordion, and then I'm linking it to another artboard that has that accordion expanded. And then I'm linking the close there back to the original artboard with the full page. And you can see kind of the end result is what you see here. So this is the actual Envision prototype. This isn't an HTML mockup or prototype. This is actually just based on what I just showed everyone based on the Sketch plugin with Envision. So as you can see here, we could do user testing on this. We can show it to project stakeholders to make sure they're on board, and everybody really gets a good sense of what the page is like and how it will interact and feel before we spend a bunch of time doing the HTML mockups and the CMS integrations. The next step is the web development or the HTML mockups. We use a program called Avocode here, and this again is a Sketch plugin. And basically what it allows is it takes all of our Sketch files and spits them out onto a web interface where the developer can come in and basically pull all the code, all the image assets they need to make the page. So in this example, the developers clicked on the what's there to do heading there, and you can see on the right side of the page, Avocode has the PostScript font name, has the font weight, the line height, the font color, all that there so that the developer can go ahead and build that out. And it also gives you the ability to actually just export all that CSS as well, so you can build your headings and all that good stuff directly from Avocode. Another thing we really struggled with was getting the assets from the graphic designer over to the web developer. So Avocode has been another good resource for us there as well. So you can see here, we have the background image, the image with all the trees and the sidewalk selected there in Avocode. And on the right side of the screen, there's an export button. So I can click that image or that export button, and I can create different variants. So one thing we really try to do, especially with these really image-heavy pages, is to make sure that we're using media queries for all the different images, especially the big background images. So you can see here, we're actually able to create 2 variants of this image, one at 25% resolution, so it's only 346 pixels wide. And then we also have a full resolution image, which is just under 1400 pixels wide. So with just a click of the button, the developer can export that image at those 2 different sizes and use that in the HTML mockup they're doing. So the last step of this process is our CMS integration. So at this point, we have the HTML mockups ready. They've been tested, and all the stakeholders have approved them. So now it's time to do our CMS integration in Jadu. So what we've done is we've created our own custom season, 100%, which is these pages that you just saw. They're kind of full bleed pages. So we call it 100% less. And the reason we have the less in there is just because we're having a lot of collisions with a lot of the CSS that was in the original standard.css file to style out basically all the different elements on our web page. And we aren't using those elements on this page, so it really didn't make sense to bring those in. So that less just kind of references the fact that we're really only including within the season the CSS needed to style the global navigation and the footer, and then everything else has been removed from that season file. And we've even done some stuff in the back where we're removing some of the elements, the HTML elements like the breadcrumbs and some of that to allow for us just to kind of dump in widgets for our hero and for those different elements that we've seen on the page. So we have that custom season that we've set up. The next thing I'll typically do is create a widget map. And this is basically what I'll pass on to John, who is our system analyst here at Messiah. So you can see I have that page that I shared with you earlier with all the different elements, and I'll kind of grid out the page with what I want each one to be as far as widgets goes. So this page ended up being like 6 or 7 different widgets. And that widget map kind of translates into obviously widgets within Jadu. So we'll create specific unique widgets just for this page. We'll add them to the home page, and then we will actually remove them so that other Jadu users aren't seeing them in their widget listing. So they're really just one-time use widgets just for specific pages like this. And then all the numbers on that page, you can see the 1, 2, 3, 4. These are all referenced in like another Google Doc where they're kind of supposed to point. So when you see widget 3 on there, number 1's the headline, number 2 is a subhead, 3 is the body copy. That way the developer knows, what we need to edit, what we need to update. In a lot of these, there's elements that don't need to be edited. Maybe it's like a background image, so we won't worry about including them in the actual widget or the editable part of the widget. It'll just be kind of hard-coded in the background there. And from there, you can see kind of the end result of this page. We can now go in, click on a widget, and add all the content we need for that specific element on the page. Here's another example of the game day widget. You can see the overview. Then we also have quotes from different students that print out on the front end when a user visits that page. So that's pretty much it. That's our workflow for these types of pages, kind of from the wireframe process all the way to the CMS integration. So hopefully that made sense. I'm sorry I was kind of going through it pretty fast, but I hope you all enjoyed it, and please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.